Hi everybody, welcome to my virtual watercolor class. In this video I'm going to be doing a monochromatic painting, right? If you came here looking for an explanation on why value is important and specific technique demonstrations, you're not going to find that here. Go check out the last video. This video is going to show how to do a monochromatic painting using value. Kind of the same, not really. I'm not going to be going as in-depth about the techniques that I covered in my last video. I'm not going to go as in-depth as to why value is super important. So this is purely more of like a demonstration, right? Now, the biggest thing that I'm going to be using is layers. Layers. Now, I showed how to do a value scale in my last video. Cool. We made a bunch of squares that vary in lights and darks. How do we actually utilize that in our paintings? I'm going to show you just in a little bit. I'm going to be painting an owl today. Why? I love painting animals, and for some reason, I'm drawn to painting birds. My suggestion is to paint something that you like. If you like animals, give it a try. Follow along with me. If you're in my physical in-person class, lucky you. I'm going to have pictures ready. I think in this video, I am going to talk about finding a good reference picture and how to adjust pictures so that you can see values a little bit easier. Yeah. Right now, I'm just prepping up my paper. I like to tape the edges of my paper down to a board so that it doesn't warp as much. It also creates a nice little border that looks really fancy. I really like using painter's tape. Try not to use masking tape. It tends to ruin the paper. It lifts up the paper texture for some reason. I'm using a painting block. Arches is the way to go. If there's one thing that I suggest investing in terms of watercolor supplies, it is Arches watercolor paper. It's really high quality, really nice, pretty good for the price. If you get like a 24 pack, it's like 26 bucks, 27 bucks. Think of it like $1 for a sheet of paper, right? I spent way more on things that are worth way less. All right, so I have my paper ready. Let me show you the photo that I found and how you might want to adjust it if you're not very familiar with looking for values in a reference picture. All right, you're going to see a behind the scenes close-up look at my picture process here. So I go to Pinterest. I really like Pinterest. I think it has a really nice variety of reference pictures that you can use here. Now, when looking for reference pictures, I tend to lean towards reference pictures like this one, where you have a nice variety of values here. I could pretty much point out every square on our value scale in this photo. We have shadows, we have midtones, we have highlights. Great photo to use. But today I'm going to be painting this owl. What a wonderful photo. How do I download it? I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm going to kick the I'm going to click these three buttons right here, right next to the owl in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to click download image. And in terms of downloading image, I'm going to, I think it just downloaded. I think. Let's double check. Yeah, right there. There you see all my video edits and all my mistakes. So this alone, I should be pretty good in ready to draw and paint it. But if maybe you want to get rid of the colors because colors can kind of be distracting, when I see certain colors, I have to think, okay, well, what value is that compared to a different color? You can go to Edit. Now this works for iPhones, this works for Androids, whatever you need to click in order for you to edit. There's like an adjustment tab here. And I want to go on the right hand side. I'm looking for right here, saturation. I'm going to bring that all the way down. That's going to create, that's going to turn my image to a black and white image. No color whatsoever. I can focus solely on value. Now, if you want to adjust other areas in your photo, right, like contrast, let's say maybe I want it a little bit darker. Ooh, that's quite nice. I don't think I want to go that intense. I definitely don't want to lower the contrast. I'm going to bring a higher contrast. Let's get some deeper shadows in there. That looks like fun. Nice. The rest is up to you if you want to create darker shadows, or maybe you want your highlights to be a lot brighter. I tend to just touch on contrast and saturation. If you don't have contrast, that's okay. I've come across that before as well. Saturation works just as fine. So this is our photo. All right, let's get to the actual fun stuff. I don't have a pencil. Oh boy. This is the closest thing I have on hand. I got a red pencil. I'm going to be using my red that I used in my last video. I honestly think maybe a raw umber or burnt umber would be nice for this reference picture. But I don't want to waste my paint, right? I might speed up this drawing process. So enjoy the quick drawing that I do here.
Maybe not. This could be fun. Fun to see. Kind of get a glimpse into how I draw here. I always like to do big shapes. I like doing guidelines. It really helps me. I don't know how well you can actually see the drawing. You can see it quite nicely. Yeah. I'll try to draw a little bit darker. Now, I don't want to do all my details in. I really just want to... I'm placing these lines as landmarks. That's a really good way to put it, landmarks. Because I want the details to be painted in. I'm going to do a nice big oval here. Uh-oh, did I go too big? That's okay. I'm going to make it work here. I'm using big shapes to describe my owl here. Big shape for the head. It's kind of big oval shape for the body. I'm really, just kind of feeling it out right now. I try not to overcomplicate things. Unfortunately, this is not my drawing class, so can't describe too much detail because I want to get to the painting portion. If you do want to learn how to draw, you can always request a video if you like. Nice. That's feeling pretty good to me so far. Got the feathers. Yeah. Go ahead and drawing that branch. So what he's sitting on. Interesting. We don't see the other foot here, which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. We do see the wing go back. Maybe his foot's behind somewhere. I only see one foot. We're going to do one foot. That's okay too.
All right, we have our owl. So the first thing that I want to do is I like to start off either with my midtones. In this case, I'm going to go for a lot lighter tones. So my water to paint ratio means I'm going to need a lot of water. Now, two big techniques that I haven't discussed in these videos is wet on wet and wet on dry. That means wet on wet is putting water down on the paper first, as opposed to wet on dry, where I'm painting directly on wet paintbrush on dry paper. I'm feeling kind of fancy. I usually start off my paintings as wet on wet. And you know what? We're going to continue that. Maybe not in all the areas, but I think just certain areas where I want there to be some nice, smooth transitions. We're just going to wet this whole face. Let's just wet this whole face. Let's have fun. And it's tempting to paint everything in these wet areas with some sort of value. Since I made this really nice kind of very, very light mixture, I'm going to have very subtle color changes here, tone changes. So right now I'm just putting in some nice light tones around here. These are very, very soft tones that are gonna really lighten up when they dry. And the best way for me to put this is paint where you see shadows. That's all I'm doing. I'm not being super specific on where these are going. I'm just putting down where I think I see shadows. And you know what? We're gonna mix it up a little bit here. I am gonna do some wet on dry, and I think you're gonna see exactly where I do that wet on dry, especially right here. I know that neck is actually darker in certain areas, but I think I want that to be a lot lighter in my painting. One thing that's nice is that I'm the artist. I can choose and decide where I want my lights, where I want my darks. And I'm also kind of creating a nice texture right now. Those feathers on the back look kind of scary. They look intimidating. I'm going to give them some space over there. So big difference between the face where we did wet on wet. We have very soft edges, okay, compared to wet on dry where I have these very distinctive lines there. Now when I move my brush really quick like that to create this kind of little patchy look, that's called dry brushing. That's one of my favorite techniques that I like to use. And I push the belly of my brush into my paper and I move pretty quick to create some nice texture. One of my favorite ways to create texture. Now we're approaching the belly and the legs. That's when I'm going to do some more wet on wet because we have these very, very soft transitions. So that's what we're going to do. You don't always have to wet everything. I like to wet a good amount, even areas that I'm not painting, because I want my paint, my wash to kind of spread, not all the way to the edge, because if it were to spread all the way to the edge, it's gonna just stop there. I want that to let it do its thing, and I think this is one thing that a lot of people have a hard time doing in watercolor, is letting watercolor be watercolor and letting it do its own magic, right? What I mean by that is me placing my paint down and just, I don't touch it too much. It's tempting. Trust me, I know. It's very tempting. Don't do it though. Just let it do its thing. Trust that it knows what it's doing. Ooh, almost dipped it in my heavy paint area. Don't want that. I'm gonna demonstrate dry brushing really quick over here on our branch. I think that'll be a nice demonstration. So you don't want your brush super wet. I'm going to push it using the belly of my brush, kind of scraping it against the surface like that. Can you hear that? That's what you want to hear. Yeah, there we go. That's a nice little first layer there. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Continue on in the feathers over here. Again, I'm not stressing out about the details. I'm not stressing out if everything is going to be perfect. It's okay if it's not. Now, people really can do very detailed watercolor paintings, for me, what I love about watercolor is that it doesn't have to be super detailed. It can be a little ambiguous. It can be a little abstract. And that's what makes watercolor so beautiful, in my opinion. I feel like that's going to be very hard for me to paint all the details. So doing this little dry brush is my way of kind of cheating. But I think it looks nice. And then we're just going to fill the back in here. I'm just going to fill that up. Let that be very dark. So that's kind of the tail. All right. So, did a lot of techniques here, right? I did wet on wet. Those wet on wet areas are going to be the face and the body. I did wet on dry. That's going to be the neck, kind of around the head, little bits here and there. And did a lot of dry brushing, which I didn't expect to do, but that's just how that's how it translated in my head. When I'm looking at my photo, I'm thinking, what is going to be the best technique to recreate this texture or this value? In this case, dry brushing was my way of creating that feathery texture, as well as this kind of woodsy texture, right? We're going to give this some time to dry. This is just my first layer. Check back in a couple minutes here. All right, so about maybe 15 to 20 minutes later, my paper is fully dried out. If you are, if you have that much time in between layers, it's nice to do a second painting on the side. Or maybe you can do some chores. In my case, I'll be honest, I was playing some Game Boy. That's the fun part, right? So we have our first layer. Everything's feeling really nice. I really like how the wet on wet areas are looking and feeling. They're very soft. It's exactly what I wanted. And I feel good to continue adding on. So I'm adjusting my water to paint mixture. If you're not quite sure what that is, go check that last video. If you are sure what that is and you're like, yes, I'm going to begin adding in some darker tones. Now again, I'm going to be switching between wet on dry as well as wet on wet layering here. I'm actually pretty used to bringing my head in very close. You know what? This is the perfect time where I would like to do a wet on wet on top of a wet on wet layer that I already did. This is very common. Just because you do one wash layer doesn't mean you can't do a second one. And I love doing this technique here. love, love it. It's very fun. At least I think it's pretty fun. All right, again, I'm just putting down. This time I'm being a lot more particular in where I'm putting my water because I really do like a lot of the softer tones that I have in some areas, but I do want, again, smoother transitions in others. So let me go ahead and give that a try. This is not as wet as I had it the first time, and I'm doing a higher paint to water ratio than last time as well. As you can see, that really spreads out quite differently than what we had. Now you can kind of smooth it out here and there as well. Pick up, and we're going to move that around. I'm also going to move that around. These are the moments where it's really hard to kind of not touch some of these areas. I'm going to take a step back, and I'm not going to fiddle with all of this too much. You can really, really go from light to dark very quickly. You don't want to overwork your pieces. That you're always in the danger of doing that. Tip that really, really helped me kind of step away from my painting sometimes is to always remember this. You can always add more later. You can never take it away. There are some times when, yes, you do have time to take it away. More often than not, you're left with, I wish I didn't add that much. So I'm going to take that prior knowledge and we're going to move on. I'm just going to begin building some values in some of these areas here, especially down over here. Again, I'm feeling pretty satisfied with how everything is right here. There might just be one or two things that I would like to adjust. Again, layering on this dry brush technique that I did earlier. If you feel like you're not getting that look down, that is a-okay. If this is your first time giving it a try, don't stress too much about it. Now, one thing that I'm doing to get my dry brush is after I dip, I touch the wall of my well to let some of that paint drip down. Again, I'm not beating myself up if everything is not 100% exactly like my reference photo. It's okay to not be exact. It's okay if things aren't perfect. You do not have to be a perfectionist in everything that you do. You just got to let go, try and get in the zone. The moments where I'm really, really quiet and not talking too much is me kind of getting in my zone. Not only are we practicing our water to paint ratio, you're also practicing how much moisture you're holding in your brush if you're trying this dry brush technique. That is my second layer on the owl. I'm going to go ahead and begin hitting the log a little bit. We might even do a little something for the background too. We'll see. So last time I dry brushed horizontally on my log. Now I am kind of doing this curved direction, following the contour of this log. I think that looks nice. Kind of building out toes here. I want these toes to feel like they're separate from everything else. feel like I really am starting to go in now to feeling pretty ready to start pushing in some of these darker shadows here. And we are approaching layer 3 with all this. Yeah. And layer 3, everything's still feeling really good to me. You know, I do like how I used a red color pencil. This little demo that we have here really blends in nicely with the red tones that I'm building. I think I want to be daring here. Should I? Should I be daring? That's hard. That's hard. Let's try this. Okay, I'm gonna do another. Oh no! Another too eager. Another wet on wet over on the face here. Let me give this a try. And try not to cover my painting as I'm doing it as well. This is a fun technique. So I am putting in wet. I want to go right up to this line right here, but I'm not. I'm putting water pretty close to it. But I'm not going to touch it because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill that little space in with my watercolor like that. I'm going to go right into the beak. So this is going to spread out quite nice. And I'm not going to have any cauliflowers by adding water. Because I want my shadows to spread. I don't want the water to push anything. It's a scary, scary technique to use, but very, very rewarding if you can pull it off. Yeah, nice. We are going to continue building our layers. Like I said, we are on to layer 3 at the moment. One thing I'm going to mention is that the darks that I'm pushing around the face here, I'm not going to continue over here. I want my light areas to still be light, even though, you know, there are darker shadows. I want to keep the light areas light. I want to keep the dark areas dark. And this is also a time where your brush stroke is very important. So I'm not doing these very, very smooth lines. I'm kind of doing these smaller brush strokes that aren't perfect, but I'm trying to mimic the texture of my owl at this point. That is something that I always keep in mind, despite me focusing on the shadows and the lights. I'm also thinking about the texture of what I'm painting. It's kind of the secondary thought, but of course, the main thing is my values. I'm trying to place down my shadows and I'm trying to place down my lights. And how I do that also depends on what type of texture I want in these areas. I'm feeling very, very satisfied right now with how this is going. I'm going to start entering layer 3 over here as well. Being very careful not to overdo this. I think I want to keep this area very light, and I want to keep this area very light as well. The detailing is where I whip out the really tiny brush, if you haven't noticed. I'm using a significantly smaller brush now. And I'm putting in my last bits of dry brushing here and there, which can be a little tricky at this point. Again, this is also the time where if you want to be very meticulous with your details, as you're coming to the end of your painting, this is the time where you can really put in those tiny details. You might be able to hear my cat in the background. If you are, that is very lucky. She usually doesn't make too much noise. What's up? Let's pet your cat while you paint. Gives you good luck. Here. Let's get a painting light. There you go. Hey, hey. How you doing? Let's take a little break. I'll show you my cat. Hey, girl. Oops. Hey, girl. Definitely not a part of the video, but it's part of my video. How's it looking? It's looking quite nice. I like that. I like that a lot. I like what's going on here. Yes, yes, yes. Fourth layer for my eye. And those dark shadows probably is going to be my last layer. If that can keep that dark shadow that it has right now, I'd be very, very happy. I really want the focus to be right here, so I don't think I'm going to should we put some darker shadows here? I don't think I'm going to. I don't think I'm going to. Because, like I said, I want to keep the focus right here, mostly. That's where I want a lot of my dark shadows. think I'm reaching to a point where I'm feeling very satisfied with what I have. I might be finished pretty soon. I think I might do some little mid-tone adjustments, let it dry, give me some time away from it, and see how I feel. Oh man, cat's going crazy today. If you're a fellow cat owner, I think you know what I mean. I think she might have found a ghost in the place. I think I'm debating if I should do a little fancy, like a little water splatter. Like I was like, I might hold off. I think I want to do a little background wash. I think I'm going to do a background wash. Should I? Let's see. Let's see how it looks in the camera. It looks quite nice, but I think we can make this side pop out a little bit more. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. Yeah. Background wash. Let's do it. Background wash. One of my favorite things to do. It's wet on wet. If you're not quite sure what to do with your background, and as we could see in our photo, it's a kind of a blurry background. Load up that back with water. I suggest waiting for your areas to completely dry. I'm impatient, so I'm going to just be very careful. Making sure that there is a lot of moisture on this paper, and I'm really going right up to the edge of my owl. I hope I don't regret going too close, especially to these really dark areas. For the sake of time in the video, I'm going to just get right up in there. And when doing your background, sometimes I like to do the background first. Today, maybe it's a full moon, I'm doing background last. Usually I do my background in my first layer. I think I was still trying to figure out whether I wanted to do background or not. Here we are. 20 minutes later. So this is what we're going to do. I still have my red mixtures here. I'm just going to re-wet these areas over here. Make sure I didn't miss anything. And I take my mixture, and this is what I do. All I do is I just blop those on. Nothing crazy, nothing fancy. Just blop them on. And it's very important to make that noise with your mouth. Since it's very wet, a lot of this is going to lighten up. I really want that to kind of be framed like that. There we go. Nice. And then we're going to just kind of be dramatic right there. We're going to add in a couple more here. Just shape the owl like that. Very sharp. Right there. We're going to let this dry, and then we're going to see how it looks at the end. And hopefully it looks nice and cool. If not, you know, at least you saw maybe what you shouldn't do for a background. Background's a little bit harder with monochromatic paintings because a lot of our subject is of the same color, right? And usually I like using a different color for the background, but that's not the point. I think that's nice. I'm happy with it. I might do a little fancy, no. I'm going to keep it clean. I'll see you in a little bit when it dries. All right, everybody, so here it is. Once it's a little bit drier, it's not entirely dry quite yet, or just yet. It is going to take maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 more minutes to completely dry. But I still like how that looks. That looks quite nice to me. As you can see, this was a really great example of how something can look different when it's wet compared to when it's mid-dry, right? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If maybe this isn't quite what you were looking for, there are plenty of other YouTube videos that you can find. Just look up watercolor values. But this is exactly what I would demonstrate in class. And I just wanted to make this for you. That way you always have something to come back to. If you didn't get a chance to look at the last video where I went over value scales and just this technique, water to paint ratio, it should be a really quick video. Go ahead and take a look at that. Other than that, if you have any questions or comments, please drop it in the comments below. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I hope you have a great class session, and I'll see you next time. See ya.